All right, John and Damiere, very excited to have you on this special edition of Coffee and Analytics. For anybody watching live, chat room is open. If you have questions, go ahead and ask as we go. It obviously makes it much more interactive. I want to frame a few things, and then Damiere, I'm going to let you tell kind of your franchise backstory. But a few things that I want to frame. One is athletes in franchising on two angles. One would be the business side. If we take the average salary and the average tenure of a professional athlete, it's not just NFL, it could be any of the sports. The reality is the bulk of professional athletes don't make retirement-ish money and have to figure out something else to do. And so I've loved franchising as it relates back to an athlete saying, I've made some money. How do I protect this? How do I now go ahead and leverage this to build wealth for me and my family? And then obviously, like the big spin has been with NIL is how can an athlete earlier in their career, in their college career, where they've been deemed obviously a professional athlete, how can they use this moment now to make a little bit of revenue that in turn maybe down the line can get into franchising? So love this topic. Damiere, I want to start with you. How did you fall into franchising? What's kind of your backstory as a professional athlete now into business?
Yep. So I played 10 years in the NFL, 9 credited. So I had a good long career, made some money. And coming into my career, my rookie year, my first 4 years, I was in Charlotte with the Carolina Panthers. And I just had a great locker room of older guys. 2015 was the year, so that was the year we went to the Super Bowl. I would say 85 to 90% of that roster consisted of veterans, like true veterans that have been through 2 or 3 different contracts, all pros, things like that. And all of them had some type of hand outside in the community, whether it was foundation, some type of business. Some of them had franchises. So to me as a rookie, that's all I saw. And that was kind of like that was like the foundation and the steps of it. I was an undrafted rookie. So to me, it was always, how do I figure out, how can I maximize everything? I know that there was a possibility that I wasn't going to last as long. And there were times, different areas in my career where I thought, I don't know if I'm going to be able to string off another year. So over the time, I started to strategically do different things during the off season, just to kind of prepare myself for it. I think, of guys like Thomas Davis, Greg Olson, Charles Johnson, him in particular, he had Jan Pro, I believe he had some other franchises that I know that he does. And then all of those guys have huge foundations. They have restaurants, bars, things like that. So that was just kind of like a no-brainer. How can I turn that small or, average salary to something even bigger in case I don't ever get that 20, 30, $40 million contract?
As a young 20-ish year old falling into obviously the NFL, undrafted, you've made it, you're now making more money than you've probably seen, and many young 20-year-olds are going to see in their entire lives. Like you've gone to a higher level at that point. I think about how I was with money then versus now, and obviously it's vastly different. I'm now almost 45, and the way that I look at money is totally different. Were there people around you at that point that are telling you, like, Damiere, we don't know, this could be your only year, you could be in here for 10 years, you could be in here for whatever, here's how you start protecting your money? And at what point did the switch turn in your head to say, there's going to be, as much as I'm in it, like, I'm sure you're like pinching yourself every moment throughout this, but knowing that you're going to have to do something with this beyond, like, at what point does like the business and financial sense start hitting you in your young career?
Yeah. I think it hit me a little bit early, right? I was undrafted. My first year, I was strictly practice squad. So there's a vast difference between the checks that I'm seeing versus another rookie that's on active. So right then and there, you see the dynamics of what I can do and what I can't do, right? If we go out to dinner, I can't just throw my card out and say, don't worry about it, I'll take it, right? But luckily for me, we had so many veterans in that locker room that they protected that dynamic of it. And then really for me, where it really flipped the switch as far as business-wise, financial, trying to really figure out what's going on. I was 4 years in. Year 3, year 4, I ended both seasons on IR. And I kind of sat down to myself. I was like, I know I can play the game, but I don't know if I can hold up physically to last. So while I'm sitting on the couch in October, November, going through rehab and not really feeling a part of the team, just not in meetings or anything, I said to myself, I need to figure something out this offseason. So that offseason was the first offseason I used the NFL benefit stuff. I started my MBA program with Indiana University. That's kind of funneled directly from the PA. And then I did an externship, which is also a program offered by the NFL with Events DC over in District of Columbia. And they're like the sport and entertainment council, and they kind of handle all of that stuff, their convention center, all of that. And that was a 3-week externship where you kind of get to learn and everything. And from there, I realized, as long as the off season is doing these type of deals that most people can't get their foot into the door, and all it takes is 2 weeks or 3 weeks at a time, that allows me to learn knowledge without going to school, without necessarily doing an MBA, things like that, but also figuring out what I even like to do. Most of the time, especially during college, we're picking majors to just kind of get through college, right? The biggest thing that we're focused on is just playing ball or football, basketball, whatever sport you're playing. You don't necessarily wrap your brain around if you actually like the major that you're picking. So I started doing that every off season. The following off season, I did the Harvard Business to Crossover program, that big one that you always see a bunch of people get into. I was fortunate enough to get into that, and COVID hit, so then it kind of slowed down a little bit, and I was able to rattle off a bunch more years. So I kind of got a little bit more comfortable in what my role was as a player. But I started that foundation early because truthfully, I didn't think I would last past that fourth or fifth year.
Out of curiosity, and John, I'm gonna rotate over to you on this. But did you hit NIL at all in college, or was it not? Yeah.
No, I didn't hit any NIL. Truthfully, I got suspended my first 4 years, freshman year, for taking improper benefits. So I was on a complete opposite spectrum of what's going on now.
All right, so I want to take that, John. One, I want you to frame NOCAP so that we have a framework of the company that you're with. But I want to say this comment on there because, like, and I want you to answer this question too, John. Part of what I think, or my belief is with an NIL, is exactly some of the things that Damiere was just talking about. I could get injured, but during my college years, why not build a little bit of a nest egg so that I have something to do something should the athletic thing not work out? Taking improper benefits, whatever that was, obviously now has opened up and changed the rules for it, because that is almost necessary to even make it, that to even have a shot, you need some sort of fuel. And so frame NOCAP, and then give us like the transformation that's happened with athletes finding a pathway to making a little bit of money earlier on in their careers.
Yeah, totally. Thank you, Nick, for having myself and Damiere. And yeah, certainly it's been a pretty wild 5 or 6 years. So just quickly on NOCAP Sports and the evolution of our business. So we got our start in the wake of the Alston case, which was the landmark NIL deal that allowed, athletes like Damiere to profit off their name, image, and likeness. And we started and still very much exist as a sports marketing agency that specializes in athlete creators. I mean, majority of our work to this point has been with college athletes, connecting athletes with brands, ranging from Walmart and LinkedIn all the way down to, the garage startup, ultimately connecting brands with athletes, and leveraging those athletes as ambassadors for that brand. And we run, marketing PR campaigns on behalf of that brand, connecting them with our enormous network of athletes. And we've really evolved as a company with the, evolving definition of NIL. So NIL was initially intended to, allow people like Damiere to not get in trouble for doing things that I'm sure were, not things that people should get in trouble for. And that has really evolved now. And NIL is now used as an acronym to define pay for play. And universities paying athletes and it's really, gotten away from the ultimately what the intention was, which is just allowing college athletes to participate as contributing members of society. And the fact that they weren't allowed to is really, is really illegal. So, obviously athletes working with brands is not new, and professional retired athletes, Olympians, et cetera, have been working with brands for, dozens of years. And NIL in 2018, 2019, really just allowed college athletes to do that. And again, now it's evolved to, that acronym now essentially means pay for play, and universities paying athletes. But the core of our business really continues to be creating opportunities for athletes to work with brands, and running measurable campaigns for those brands. A lot of those brands being franchisors, and in some cases franchisees that own multiple units.
And John, so like the connector though is a need. Brand X obviously wants to drive customers, which in turn will drive revenue for them. And here you're saying, well, let us connect you with someone who can help market, hit their fan base, and drive people in exchange for some sort of cash payment. And so what's interesting about what you guys are doing now is it's exactly what probably should have been done a long time ago, because colleges, or even as early as high schools, are financially benefiting off of athletes. Same sort of thing. They're driving ticket sales or merch sales or beverages and food. And so forever it was like it's almost like a silent let's not talk about it, the fact that all of these businesses are profiting off of young athletes. And here you said, well, now that coast is clear, now we can make that connection and make this, both sides should benefit from this, right?
Yeah, and our founding team, they saw this coming. We have founders that have been involved in college athletics for a long time, and they foresaw this, being not only a trend, but actually a market in itself, far before the Alston case, which sort of legalized this. And we had the foundation set and then ultimately went to market once that was established. But yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely a wild time right now. And, but ultimately, like our job is to try to create opportunities for guys like Damiere, who are go-getters and, who want to work with brands, who want to build their own personal brand, and who want to align and work with, great companies and ideally franchisors, both as ambassadors and investors.
All right, Damiere. So for clarity, obviously franchisee, are you also working with brands on how do I help them through my likeness on the marketing side too?
Currently, no. Right now I'm just a franchisee.
Okay. So let's go through the franchisee route. NFL career's ending. You put in all of this work towards all this additional education, and you decide you're going to go into franchising. How do you go about even finding the right brand for you? And what was that process like? And then what was that decision like when you made the decision to obviously go into roofing?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was a long process for sure. I would say it probably started in February. I didn't make a decision until probably October, November. And that was just for me. I just moved slow. I was still also in the midst of playing, going through OTAs and all of that type of stuff. But I got connected through a franchise consultant over at Franfleet, Steven, who's great. At the time, I wasn't really looking for anything. Again, it always happens when you're hurt and sitting on the couch. And he reached out at a great time. And I was like, you know what? It's my 9th year. I'm coming off injury. Like, I'm 30. I know it's about that time. Let's start looking. So I went through the process with him, which is basically he has, a bunch of different brands who may be looking into expanding into that territory or wherever you're looking at. And he kind of just sits down with you, figure out what you're looking for, interest, investment threshold, what your risk tolerance, things like that. And then we kind of sit down with a list, maybe 4 to 5 to start with. You take meetings after meetings after meetings with the entire, brand team and president, things like that. Number 1, to make sure you qualify. Number 2, to make sure it's a good partnership back and forth, that you can work with these people. And if it doesn't work out, we take it off the list, maybe add another. You kind of just continue to do that until you whittle it down to 1 or 2. Then you take almost like a recruiting visit. You go out to an official visit. You go out to their headquarters. You finally meet everybody in person. And then from there, you make a decision. And then you figure out funding, do all of the real nitty-gritty stuff, training, and then you're off and running.
How did you pick roofing out of everything that exists?
Yeah, so for me, honestly, I don't know. I had no construction experience. I'm the guy, right? I'm just gonna hire somebody, right? I don't think I've hung a TV in any of the places that I've ever lived. You know what I mean? So, but at the time, I was just kind of looking. We were in Charlotte. I knew it was going to be in Charlotte. Charlotte's a market where it kind of already has everything, right? Initially, I thought when I think of franchising, I thought of brick and mortar, fast food, casual fast food, some sort of fitness place, things like that. Steve kind of brought to my attention the home service sector, which is a fraction of the buy-in when you think of things like McDonald's, Chick-fil-A, all of those brick and mortar things. They're a fraction of the cost to get in. When you think about scalability, expansion, different locations, there's no rent, there's no lease, there's no building. It's buying another vehicle, hiring another person, and now maybe you have 2 or 3 locations in a state. Maybe you have a satellite location in a different city. Roofing in general, it just kind of came down to number 1 being one of the higher tickets in the home service area space. The industry as a whole is sort of recession proof. If you need a roof, you need to get it done. And then also just the barrier of entry in our state as far as licensing, insurance. It was a little less rigorous compared to like electrical, HVAC, plumbing, things like that. And it was something that I could handle myself in the beginning if I wanted to do it. If I wanted to build it the right way, get my hands in the dirt, I wouldn't be able to go out and rewire some electric or redo plumbing, but I can get out, inspect a roof, show you the damage, things like that. I can do that hands-on, and I couldn't really do the other stuff. So roofing was what it was.
Okay, I have some comments, but first a question. Because I asked if you're doing the brand side, but I would imagine as a business owner, like part of the story is you are a former NFL player. So you are doing the brand work. It just is for actual business, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And philosophically, here are a few of my comments. One is that when I hear your story, not drafted into NFL, multiple IRs, like you have a comeback story. Suspended in college, like you have a comeback story. As a franchisor, I love that because that means you have grit and hustle versus someone that might have had it easier. first round pick, first overall, might not have that ingredient that you have. And you just said, like, if I have to go get on a roof and do an estimate and show where the damage is, I'm willing to do that. I think that's like, if I really think of the highest performing athletes in franchising who have now transitioned from athlete into entrepreneur, it is those that have the grit and hustle, because there are going to be bad days. And sometimes you have to access that deep inside your soul to use that as leverage. Does that ring true with you? Is that part of your superpower? Yes, I played in the NFL, but it's more so your ability to recover.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, just kind of speaking on that, we opened up about mid-February, March. I was solo until August. So I was every appointment, every inspection, every follow-up, every estimate. We're a subcontracting model, so the actual work was subcontracted out to the crews, but I did everything. And I was just because I wanted to be a part of it. I wanted to be ingrained in what we were building. Long-term goal, I want to go hands off and let it run, but I felt like I needed to put that sweat equity in, number one, to learn the business as a whole, and number two, to be able to manage the people when I do hire them, to understand their pain points, to understand the areas that they may struggle, to understand those type of deals. So I think it definitely reigns true. Every day is definitely not the greatest day. And every job doesn't go as planned. And there's a lot of different things that you have to pick yourself up from. You're going to mess up, right? The first year, probably 2 years, is all figuring it out, learning experiences. And it's also part of the reason why you're a franchise, to kind of cushion the falls a little bit. But irregardless, you're going to fall and you're going to have to find your way to get back up.
I had the privilege of knowing a guy. He passed away last year, Junior Bridgman. But there's an epic story. He was playing for the Milwaukee Bucks at the time, and he bought two units of like a KFC or one of those brands in New York City. And he was losing everything. Like, every bit of his investment was pouring into this brick and mortar. He was screwed. And so there's two funny parts of the story. One is some guys broke into his unit late at night and tried moving the safe. They fell through the plated glass window and cut themselves, and they got pissed off, and they torched the building. And the insurance money he got out of that allowed him to build up his units in Milwaukee. He got a rescue on that. And he would always tell the story about he was listening to the radio in Milwaukee one day, and some lady calls in and she goes, "It's so sad how much they pay athletes. I saw Junior Bridgman working behind the counter at a burger restaurant." He's like, I own it. It's not. But the point is, like, the recovery side, I think, ends up being so critical in business. If you flash forward in life, obviously you're very young still, and you're young in your business story. Do you think you're going to be more proud of what you accomplish in business, or more proud of what you accomplished in your athletic career?
Yeah, I think the business part of it. I think inherently, right, we grow up playing the sport, so it's almost like second nature. And the business area of it is completely different. It's jumping off the bridge. It's taking that leap of faith. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm just going to get out and doing it. And, turning that into a success story, it will be one of your greatest accomplishments.
John,
yeah,
obviously, your guys' relationship of matching an athlete with a brand for driving the consumer sales is the top thing that you're giving to brands. Mm-hmm. But because of your touch point with all these athletes who are, again, we're talking about finding a way to build a little bit of revenue in their college careers. A very small percentage are going to go on to be professional athletes and make a little bit of money, might not have the longest careers, but the vast majority of them are going to have to figure out, what do I do with this hustle and this grit and turn it into something? Like, much as you guys are the go-between between consumer brand and athlete to drive the influence to get customers in, do you see transformation happening in your business too, that you're going to be able to educate athletes on the protection of money and how franchising could possibly be an avenue for them to invest in the future?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, ultimately, we want to like I've mentioned, we want to create opportunities for athletes. Like the athlete is at the core of everything that we do. And we've developed just such an enormous network of athletes and also university partnerships and also agency partnerships where we have this network, and it just makes a lot of sense for us and to open doors and create investment and wealth building opportunities as well for those athletes, and not just sort of short-term one-off campaigned ambassadorships. And we're working with Damiere and I's mutual friend Steven, who he's mentioned, to better understand the franchise space and what opportunities exist. And as Damiere mentioned, like when you think of franchising, you think of Shaq and whatever, I forget the chicken place or the Burger King, I think it is, that he owns. And you don't realize, you need to almost, you need help sort of opening your eyes to all the different categories that exist in franchising, like roofing and home services and, above ground pools and, all these different opportunities. And, some require, larger investments than others. And ultimately, it makes a lot of sense for us to figure out how we can kind of connect the dots and leverage this enormous network, of athletes to connect them with franchises. And like I said, like help these athletes, especially transition from each phase of their career. I'm sure Damiere can speak to, a little bit of the trauma that you experienced as you realize that you're hanging up, your cleats for the last time. And like, okay, you have that sort of frightening moment of what am I going to do next? You, I think, you might agree, are probably a unique case where you had that foresight, and you were also lucky to be, surrounded by some legends that, on that Panthers team, and obviously went to a Super Bowl. But most athletes, I'd say, are not thinking ahead like that. And, their career ends, God forbid, from an injury or retirement. And there's a little bit of a, freak out moment. So we're actually, building capabilities beyond just our brand marketing expertise, and also going to be developing a talent arm of our business and helping athletes sort of manage and transition, from one stage of their career to the next. And we think that investing and potentially franchising is a great opportunity.
John, are you seeing that conversation? Obviously, you guys are a newish company, and you've been a part of this NIL transformation. But are you seeing the conversation go from you have to talk to athlete about protection of money to them coming to you and saying, yeah, I get it, I'm going to push burger X, but what else should I be doing here? Like, is a conversation, is the athlete being educated earlier to have this conversation and bring it proactively to you now?
100%. Yeah. And Damiere, curious to get your take on this as well. But I think like a lot of the pushback of NIL from maybe some of the old fogies, that love the traditional college sports business model, is like, what, you're just going to give these kids a bunch of money. And I think what they probably didn't realize was that giving them a bunch of money, sure, kids are going to make mistakes just like adults make mistakes. But I actually think exposure to that money at an early age has created some pretty business savvy and forward thinking individuals who are, investing that money, putting that money away, advocating for themselves and their, position on the team or in the community. And I think that all athletes, and a lot of college athletes and as a result of NIL are maturing a lot quicker. And I think that's a good thing. And I think that ownership is also a good thing, especially when it comes to universities and universities are doing everything they can to retain athletes so that they don't hit the transfer portal. They're doing everything they can to recruit athletes, and it's a very competitive space right now. And I actually think business ownership and a connection and a tie to that community, like Damiere said, either through a foundational, connection or through a business ownership, is a great way for also universities to help keep that athlete connected to Charlotte or Chapel Hill or Charlottesville, whatever that college town is or community where that athlete decided to go to school.
I'm glad you made that point. I mean, when I'm advising anybody who has had some sort of positive athletic career and they say, what should I do with franchising? Statement one is say, go where you're most famous, because that will give you an early stage win. And typically, like even Damiere, obviously you had a long run in the NFL, longer run than 99% of athletes that make it there. But I say go back to your college market because you were a hero there, and that's where like the fans remember you. So if you want a business boost right out of the gates, you're there. And so Damiere, I would imagine, like obviously Panthers background, you could walk up to a door and say, I used to play for the Panthers, and automatically that gives you an in. That's an advantage of being able to leverage your previous life into the current one, right?
Yeah, 100%. And we try to find decent ways to leverage that for sure. And that was honestly my whole goal, right? I knew whatever I was going to pick, whatever I was going to do, I was going to be very involved early on to be able to leverage everything in the past career that I've had. So I feel like it's one thing to leverage who I am and not show up to the door. And there's even a bigger boost of calling in, and I'm the one showing up to the appointment. I'm the one running everything, and they physically see. And now that reputation continues to soar. Word of mouth gets out, and now we're running, early on in the first year of our business.
Damiere, for franchisors that are watching this, and I'm going to frame this question so that you can answer it properly. Like obviously an athlete comes with an aura, and businesses are super jazzed up for the pure idea. Like when you were going through your discovery days, behind the scenes, you're like, man, if we can get him in here, we're going to be able to leverage that a former NFL player has bought our business. Like right. That's how they're thinking behind the scenes. And so you have these franchise brands that are watching this and saying, all right, whether it's Damiere, it's the next Damiere, what do I need to do to get my story in front of you to make you say, all right, I'll take a look at what that business opportunity is. Like if you're giving them the inside track to what they need to do in getting in front of someone like you, or that the next one that's coming up in the Panthers that's looking around the locker room and saying, I need some advice. How would you advise they get their message in front of an athlete like you?
Yeah. I think, the obvious is right what we're talking about now. Getting athletes already to market you. The athlete bubble is very hard to get into, but once you're in it, all it is word of mouth. It's just anytime you go to a new locker room, first thing you do, hey, I'm new in town. You got a massage therapist, you got a PT guy, you got this and that. And there's no second, whoever you say is the first person I'm going to go to. And if you're able to get into those circles with John or Steve or people who have relationships with athletes who can speak up for you and keep you top of mind, and everybody will be thinking about it. There's far and few in between that we know who does franchising, right? Drew Brees, you think of Shaq, you think of those bigger guys, but if you're able to kind of become a frequent and consistent thing in the locker room of trickling down to those guys that are year 3, year 4, that may not have had the millions of dollars, because initially you think of Shaq or Drew Brees and they're like, well, yeah, they made $50 to $100 million. Of course they can go out and buy 50 Jersey Mikes or whatever the case may be. But getting it down more granular to show that, hey, buying one location is actually very feasible for just a journeyman who's been in the league for 2 years or 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
John, for a franchisor that's watching this from your side, what do you want them to know about the problem that you can solve for them?
Yeah, I would say sort of building off Damire's point, I think a great way to get in the door with athletes is to first work with them as ambassadors for the national brand, like through the corporate marketing fund. And I know we're talking about sort of local franchisee investing, but really, dipping your toes into the sports and athlete world through, a more traditional, brand partnership, I think is a great way to see that return from a marketing and PR and communication side, as well as some of the earned media that comes with that. And then it also gives you a sense of, how your brand will perform in certain markets once you're connecting with a Damiere who, has a lot of influence in Charlotte and Columbia, South Carolina, or, another athlete that maybe has a good audience in another important market. I would say, just getting involved and developing those relationships with, shamelessly plugging myself, but also others that are in the space that can help a brand, marketing or franchise development person navigate, and penetrate the sports ecosystem. Sometimes it starts with, a marketing investment, and it can turn into, a larger partnership.
I mean, I would encourage every franchisor that's watching this, reach out to John. Here's my statement on it. Like the reality is the athlete has always been an influencer, whether it's on the field and people want to buy the jersey and wear it in the stands or the signs or the autographs, whatever it is, the athlete has always been a hero to a community. What hasn't always been available is the way that a brand can pay that athlete to now have influence. And so now comes influencer marketing, where every TikToker has things that they get paid for distributing. And now all of a sudden, the athlete who actually had authentic audiences built off of what they were able to do on and off the field, now there's a way to connect the brand to the athlete that is within the rules of how NCAA works. And then obviously, like, there's been plenty of brands that say now that an athlete is a professional athlete, how can I leverage them to get lift in the brand? I think athletes are a tremendous resource for getting that first interaction. Where brands make a mistake is they can't blame the athlete for what happens next. So someone or an influencer brings someone into your restaurant, it's up to you to be operationally sound and give that customer a great experience. It's not the athlete's job to now go do that job. So they make.
Well, it is in Damiere's case. No, I'm kidding.
In your case, you better get that roof right.
Right.
So, yeah. But yeah, no, I think it's obviously transformative. Damiere, I want to end on this because I'm curious. Like, you were a little too old for when this hit. Like, do you look back at this and be like, what the hell? Like, why couldn't I have been just a little bit younger going through this?
Yeah, for sure. I think so. I think we were all at that point when I was in college where it was starting to be a budding issue, and we had a few. I'm pretty sure we had a few things that went through South Carolina when I was there. So it was already a budding issue. And then, we kind of look back about what we were getting and how the money that we did get, weekend money, barely eating during the weekend, things like that nobody really knows about. And then, all of a sudden NIL hits and more money comes their way for, before NIL actually hit, they got paid a lot more money just to live. And then NIL hit, and then that even snowballed even more. Even just taking a little piece of that when we were in college would have been great.
Well, I mean, I'll end by saying this, and I think everybody that accomplishes something great in life finds a way to turn the chips on their shoulder into fuel. And you could look at Jordan getting cut from his high school team and goes on to be the greatest athlete of all time. I think that's the beauty of your story, and that's what I'm extracting from it. From everything, every obstacle that's been thrown in your way, you figure out a way to turn it into fuel and break through that brick wall. And now you're in franchising, and now you have the same opportunity to do this in business that you've done in sports. And so even though it sucks that you weren't able to capitalize on it because it didn't exist when you're there, I'm very confident in you able to take that fuel and turn it into something pretty powerful as it relates to franchise. And obviously franchise is a great vehicle for you to be able to do that. So for both of you, I'm grateful that you gave me some time. I'm glad that you guys joined this conversation. I love this conversation. Both of you, we've put your LinkedIns in all the channels. So anybody that's watching, feel free to reach out to John or Damiere. But thank you guys for having this conversation with me. Yeah.
Thank you for having us. And if you need a new roof in the Charlotte area, Damiere's your guy. I'm getting LinkedIn DMs already, but seriously, if you're in Charlotte, and I know folks in Charlotte, get your roof through Bumble Roofing. But yeah, no, thank you, Nick. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, for Damiere and John, I'm Nick. This was another Coffee and Analytics.